Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you to Madam Min Solahani Ji. We are from Group 4 in presenting the topic on our group subject. Introduction to Malaysian Institution. We are 7 in our group. Our leader is Farhana Batrisha binti Fadruzaman and me, Nur Izzati binti Nasir, continue with Enda Haruzana binti Shafi, Siti Mariam binti Hashim, Siti Rabiatu Akmal binti Muhammad Azmi, Aina Batrisha binti Pai, and the last member of us is Jane Sarvambia Pillai Sadasiban. Welcome to our presentation. The main idea of our observe is we touch up deeper about election in Malaysia. Malaysia is a parliamentary democratic state. The leaders are appointed as a result of election. Basically, a general election will be conducted in every 5 years or when the Yang di-Pertuan Agong dissolve the parliament. We are discussing about election in Malaysia in terms of types of election, procedures and requirements, voters and candidates. Our discussion is included supported with legal provisions, cases law, scholars' opinion and your point of view.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Enda Roziana binti Shafi'i. I'm from Group 4. My group has decided to pick topic 1 for this assignment. So without further ado, I'm going to start this presentation with the introduction to election in Malaysia. An election is a secured way of choosing representative to make decision on certain government policies. Election is actually a political decision made through public voting. Election are also used to choose leaders and to determine an issue that currently happen in our country. Through election, voters can choose candidates to solve social issues or solve problems on policies or government institution related. In Malaysia, the formation of the government was determined by the results of general elections, which are held once every 5 years. The general elections are held to select members of parliament to lead the country's ruling and to select members of state legislative assemblies to lead the state governments. Election is a general political process in any democratic countries. According to the Article 114 of the Federal Constitution, the Election Commission was established as a primary governing body which is responsible for monitoring election process. When a majority of voters opted for a particular party, this means that the voters have certain expectation from the candidate. Thus, the party that wins the election will form the government, and it is their responsibility to realize the promises and manifesto that they had pledged to the voters during the election campaign.
Type of elections. There are two types of election in Malaysia, which is the general elections and by-elections. Now, I will explain about the general elections. The general election is to determine membership seats of all of the pupil and state legislative assembly in the parliament, whether dissolved or self-dissolved after expiry of 5 years as the stipulated in the Constitution of Malaysia. Next, I will explain about by-elections. By-election is to fill unanticipated parliamentary or state legislative seat vacancy due to death, resignation, disqualified, and annulment of the election result by the elections courts. For your information, in the general elections, voters participated to elected 222 members of the Dewan Rakyat elected from 14 states below, including federal territories comprised of 3 territories, which is Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, and Labuan. So, the parties that has the majority of the Dewan Rakyat will form the federal government.
Hi, selamat sejahtera. My name is Jen here. I'm doing a presentation. The title is Production Inquiry Installation. Okay, in Malaysia, what will sit Law House of Parliament. The Dewan Rakyat seat is 222 seat. The second word is General Constituent General Election. The people will vote it for 587 vote. Ali Dewan Undan Negeri Assembly's election is from government. We will vote for 5 years one. Every 5 years finish going to be end. We will prepare for the election. The preparation will do from SPR. They will do every after 5 years and before end they will preparation for election. That is their procedure. Every election campaign will need to pay. We need to deposit 5,000 for parliament seat and 3,000 for state seat for election. This is thank you. This is I'm ending from here. Thank you.
Voting process. Elections are only open to registered voters. Before registering to vote, Malaysian nationals 18 years of age and older must register with the Election Commission by attending any their office, a post office with computerized equipment or specific counter. Each voter receives 2 paper votes, one for every parliamentary seat of the constituency and one for seat for state assembly seat. After their identity have been verified at voting locations, each voter only receives 1 ballot for parliamentary seats in federal territories where there is no state assembly, and state where the state election is held on a different day. Candidate qualification. Candidates have the option of running as independent voters or a representative of a party in Malaysian election. The following criteria must be met in condition for an individual to be able to participate in any election. First, citizens of this country who are nationals of Malaysia. On the day of election, the candidate must be at least 21 years old and live in the state where he will compete. A candidate is disqualified if has been found or declared to be insane, found a bankrupt, or holding a office of profit that involve a conflict of interest, or having failed to submit an election expenditure report, have been found guilty by a Malaysian court and given a sentence of at least 1 year in prison or a fine of at least 2,000 ringgit Malaysia, but has not yet been pardoned, or having obtained citizenship in another country.
Hi, my name is Nur Izzati binti Nasir from Bachelor Early Childhood Education. Metric number B21106147. I will elaborate about the legal provision in election system in Malaysia. In the Federal Constitution, the legal provisions are very important because They are a reference for all if the election has reached the lapse period. The following is the lapse period regulated according to the electoral system in the provisions of the law. The following are legal formation that is mainly used to confirm that the election must be held if the time limit has been reached. The legal provision is based on the Act. The first law is the Federal Constitution. Second, the State Constitution. Third, the Election Act 1958, Act 19. Fourth, the Election Offences Act 1954, Act 5. Fifth is the 1981 election travel regulations. Sixth, the 2002 election voter registration regulation. And finally, the 2003 elections voting by post regulation. All laws and regulations are directly related to the election process. The third legal provision is the Election Act in Act 19, which is an act providing for elections to the Dewan Rakyat and to the legislative assemblies of the states. The fourth is the Election Offences Act 1954, which enacted to prevent electoral offences and corrupt and illegal practices at elections, and also connect teams and formatters connection, and also provide for the employment of election agents and to control election expenses and petitions. However, there are also some laws that, although not directly related to the election process but play a role in the smooth running of the election. Among those acts include the Police Act 1962, the Sedition Act 1970, the Official Secret Act 1972, and the Internal Security Act 1960. According to Article 114 and 115, the Election Commission shall be established and fully empowered to control the election. However, the dissolution of Parliament is based on confirmation from the Prime Minister.
My name is Roziana binti Shafi'i, and now I'm going to present about election petition in Malaysia. In Malaysia, an electoral result can be challenged in court by way of an election petition. A lawyer must have a solid understanding of the procedural requirements when drafting an election petition. Under Section 32 of the Election Offences Act 1957, an election petition can be made for the following reason. First is when there is a bribery, threats, or any misconduct that may jeopardize the election. Second is when there is non-conformity to election law and regulation. Third is when there is a corruption or illegal action carried out by candidates and agents. And the last one is an election petition can be made when the candidate or his or her agent not qualified to participate in the election. Election petition must be submitted to the High Court within 21 days of the date the election results are published in the Gazette. If the judge, after conducting a hearing of the petition, decides the election to be void, the Election Commission will issue a notice whereby a new election will be carried out in the affected constituency. As we can see in the case of G. Manivanan, anak lelaki Govindasamy, and Khairuddin bin Tarmizi, the petitioner who was the candidate for Parti Keadilan Rakyat filed an election petition alleging that the first respondent, who was the candidate for Barisan Nasional, had committed the offence that been described in Section 11 sub 1 sub B of the Election Offences Act, which involved the offence of treating undue influence or bribery, and the election ought to be declared void in accordance with Section 32 sub A of the Election Offences Act. For this case, the court held that the election petition was invalid, and the case was dismissed by the court because the petitioner had failed to specify the specific offences and failed to give enough facts and details in the petition.
Hello and Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Siti Rebecca Ahmad binti Muhammad Azmi, metric number B2111611095. Alright, for now, I want to present about scholars' opinions. the Islamic law administration in the state provide that a statement made by the Mufti cannot be cited to be fatwa unless it has been issued throughout the procedure that has been established in the announcement and subsequently published in the Gazette. In my opinion, the Mufti should at the order the Yang Ketua Agung and may at his own will or may request of any person may throw a letter address to the Mufti made and publish in the Gazette a fatwa or opinion on any question that has not been reserved or that exists in this part about the relate to the Sharia law. In addition, no statement made by the Mufti can be taken as a fatwa unless and until the statement is published in the Gazette is acknowledged with the subscription. Therefore, when published in the Gazette, fatwa must be every Muslim resident in the Federal Territories as a rigorous teaching and must be his rigorous duty to be and adhere to her fatwa unless he is allowed by the Sharia law not to follow fatwa is a matter of practice, belief or personal opinion. In fact, a fatwa must recognized by a court in the Federal Territories as authoritative or matters take the reins.
Alright, next we go to the point of view of election in Malaysia. The Malaysian election is very transparent because it takes into account all aspects of the people's safety and the future of the country. It is subject to the enactment of laws under the federal constitutions. All members of parliament in the People's House must obey it because it is subject to the royal authority. In general, the term free and fair elections refer to elections that are regular, genuine, clean, transparent, free and fair, as well as competitive, in accordance with the principles of democracy, human rights and basic justice. Alright, next. A free election allows all citizens, including voters, parties, candidates, and the media, to enjoy all their fundamental rights. These rights include freedom of expression, associations, movement, and assembly, freedom from intimidation and violence, freedom of access to information. Fair elections also protect the right of all citizens to get justice and the right to vote by secret ballot. The elections management body should be reliable, independent, impartial, and will be able to live life with equality and maximum transparency.